You want to know the real secret to confidence. It's not a pep talk in the mirror. It's not pretending you're fearless. And it's definitely not waiting until you feel ready. Confidence isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build brick by brick. And let's be real, if confidence were easy, everybody would have it. But most people don't, and that's exactly why we're here. Here's the truth. Most people think confidence shows up after success. They think once I get that job, once I lose the weight, once I'm in the relationship, TN, I'll feel confident. Wrong. Confidence doesn't come from waiting for life to hand you a gold star. It comes from showing up for yourself over and over, even when you don't feel like it. If you're sitting around waiting for confidence to just magically appear, you're wasting your life. Confidence is not a feeling. Confidence is a decision. When it comes to building long-term confidence, the single biggest factor is whether or not you keep promises to yourself. Most people don't like to admit this, but the reason they struggle with confidence is not because they're missing talent or because the world is unfair or because they don't have the right opportunities. The real reason is simple. They don't trust themselves. Every time you set a goal and don't follow through, every time you tell yourself you'll do something and you bail, you are teaching yourself that your word doesn't mean much. And if you can't rely on you, why would you feel confident? Think about it this way. Confidence is not built on hype. It's built on evidence. And the strongest evidence you can collect for yourself is proof that you do what you say you'll do. When you tell yourself you're going to wake up early, go to the gym, write that paper, make that phone call, and you actually do it, you collect a little piece of evidence that you are dependable. Over time, those pieces add up and form an unshakable belief in yourself. That's confidence. But when you constantly make promises and break them, you collect the opposite evidence that you can't trust yourself. And let's be honest, if you can't trust yourself, why should you expect anyone else to? Here's the trap most people fall into. They'll say things like, tomorrow I'm starting fresh. I'm going to completely overhaul my diet, wake up at 5 a.m., run 5 miles, and finish that project I've been putting off for 6 months. They make these grand promises, but they're unsustainable. By noon the next day, they're already back to old habits, and now they've stacked up one more broken promise. Confidence doesn't collapse because of a single failure. It collapses because of a long trail of broken commitments that eat away at self-trust. That's why building confidence isn't about making huge, dramatic declarations. It's about making realistic promises and keeping them consistently. And here's the part that will sting for some of you. You already know how to keep promises. You do it all the time for other people. You'll show up to work even when you don't feel like it because you promised your boss. You'll go to your kids' game even if you're tired because you promised your family. You'll help a friend move even though you'd rather be at home relaxing. You know how to follow through when someone else is counting on you. But the second it's just you, suddenly the excuses come out. I'll start tomorrow, I'll do it when I feel like it, and then you wonder why you don't feel confident. It's because deep down, you know you treat everyone else's word as more valuable than your own. If you want long-term confidence, you have to flip that equation. You have to decide that your promises to yourself matter just as much, if not more, than the ones you make to other people. When you say you're going to work out, you do it. When you say you're going to eat cleaner, you do it. When you say you're going to study, apply, finish, or follow through, you do it not because you feel like it, but because you said you would. That's where confidence comes from. It's not sexy and it's not instant, but it is unshakable. One of the biggest lies people tell themselves is that they need motivation first. They wait for the energy, the right mood, the perfect timing. But confidence isn't about feelings, it's about discipline. The more you act based on commitment instead of convenience, the more you'll trust yourself. The more you trust yourself, the more confident you'll be. And the next time fear or doubt shows up, you'll have proof in your back pocket. You know, I don't always want to, but I can rely on myself to do it anyway. That's how confidence is forged. Now, don't confuse this with perfection. Nobody keeps every single promise all the time. You're human, you'll mess up. The key is to make the baseline pattern one of consistency, not one of excuses. If you break a promise, own it. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't justify it. Don't make excuses. Say, I dropped the ball. That's not who I want to be. I'm going to do better. And then actually follow through the next time. Confidence doesn't require you to be flawless. It requires you to be reliable. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem to walk into a room with confidence. You might think it's because they're naturally gifted or because life has always been easy for them. In reality, the reason they radiate confidence is that they've built a track record with themselves. They know that when they set their mind to something, they'll follow through. That self-trust frees them to take risks, speak up, and step into opportunities. They're not waiting to feel confident. They built it by honoring their own word. If you want that same confidence, you have to start small and build it brick by brick. Choose one promise you can realistically keep every day and do it no matter what. That one action is a deposit into your self-trust bank account. Do it again tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. Over time, the balance grows and so does your confidence. And before long, you'll notice you're walking differently, talking differently, showing up differently. Not because you read an inspiring quote, but because you've proven to yourself that you can be trusted. That's the secret. Most people miss a confidence isn't about believing you'll never fail. It's about knowing you'll keep showing up no matter what. When you keep promises to yourself, you're not just building habits. You're building a relationship with the most important person in your life, you. And that relationship is the foundation of every ounce of confidence you'll ever have. When people think about confidence, they often picture some huge moment of achievement. They think about winning the championship, landing the big promotion, giving the perfect speech, or pulling off something so impressive that they'll finally feel proud of themselves. But confidence doesn't grow out of these big, highlight reel moments. In fact, by the time you get to a big moment, the confidence that carries you through it was built long before all the tiny, boring, everyday wins that nobody else sees. That's what stacking small wins is all about. Confidence doesn't come from hoping you'll rise to the occasion. It comes from knowing that you've been building momentum one step at a time. When you consistently stack small wins, you teach yourself that you can be counted on, and you build a track record that makes you feel unstoppable. But the problem is most people undervalue small wins. They brush them off as insignificant. They think making their bed, finishing a 5-minute task, or saying no to one temptation doesn't really matter. But those small wins add up. They're like interest in a bank account. Individually, they don't look like much, but over time, they compound into something powerful. Let me put it in perspective. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. If you stand at the bottom and stare at the peak, it looks overwhelming, maybe even impossible. That's what big goals feel like. Too far away, too hard, too much. But if you focus on taking one step, then another, before long you look back and realize how far you've come. Every step is a small win. You may not notice progress day by day, but it stacks, and that's what gets you to the summit. Confidence works exactly the same way. The danger is that people think they can skip the small wins and jump straight to the top. They want to crash diet instead of making one healthier choice at a time. They want to start a business and immediately make 6 figures instead of learning the ropes and building brick by brick. They want instant confidence without the slow grind of proving themselves daily. That's why so many people feel stuck. They don't respect the process. But the truth is, there's no shortcut. You build confidence the same way you build muscle, consistent, repeated effort that compounds over time. Here's the good news: stacking small wins isn't complicated. It doesn't require massive talent or resources. Anyone can do it. It starts with choosing 1 or 2 things you can do today and doing them well. If you make your bed, that's a win. If you show up to the gym even for 20 minutes, that's a win. If you finish the one thing on your to-do list you've been avoiding, that's a win. Each one may seem small, but the effect isn't small at all. Those wins build momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Think about the last time you had a productive day. Maybe you woke up on time, ate a decent breakfast, knocked out a few tasks early, and suddenly you were on a roll. You felt more focused, more in control, more confident in yourself. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because you stacked wins, one on top of the other, until they created momentum that carried you forward. On the flip side, think about the last time you had a bad day. You probably overslept, skipped something you said you'd do, procrastinated, and then beat yourself up for it. That's the exact same process in reverse. You stacked losses, and your confidence sank with it. The key is to understand that confidence is fragile when it's built on big moments, but it's rock solid when it's built on small, consistent wins. Anybody can show up once in a while for something huge. The real test is whether you can show up every single day in the little ways that matter. Confidence doesn't grow when you say, one day. It grows when you say, today I did. Here's another piece of the puzzle. Small wins change the way you see yourself. Every time you keep a small promise, you're reinforcing the identity of being disciplined, capable, and trustworthy. You're not just doing the action, you're shaping your self-image. Over time, you stop saying, I'm trying to be confident, and you start saying, I'm someone who follows through. I'm someone who shows up. That shift in identity is what makes confidence long-lasting. Now, let's be real. It's tempting to dismiss small wins as not enough. You might think, what's the point of making my bed? It's not going to change my life. But here's the deal. If you can't follow through on the small, visible, easy wins, what makes you think you'll follow through on the big, intimidating ones? The small wins are practice. They're training. They're the foundation that supports the big stuff when it finally comes. You don't skip practice and expect to win the game. You practice daily so that when game time arrives, you're ready. Stacking small wins isn't glamorous, but it's the secret that separates people who talk about confidence from people who actually have it. It's the reason some people walk into a room and feel at home while others shrink back. It's not because the confident ones are special. It's because they've built their self-belief brick by brick with hundreds of tiny wins that added up to something unshakable. So the next time you're tempted to dismiss a small action as unimportant, remember this confidence isn't built in leaps. It's built in steps, and the people who keep stepping day after day, stacking win on top of win, are the ones who eventually look unstoppable. If you want long-term confidence, stop chasing the big moment and start stacking the small ones, because those small wins are what create a lifetime of proof that you can trust yourself. One of the biggest lies people believe about confidence is that it requires perfection. They think they have to wait until they have everything figured out, until the timing is flawless, until there's zero fear before they can take action. That's why so many people are stuck in neutral. They're waiting for the day when they finally feel fearless and they call it preparing. But in reality, it's just procrastination in disguise. Confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being willing to act in the middle of imperfection, in the middle of fear, in the middle of uncertainty. That's why the real key is courage, not perfection. Courage means doing the thing even though you're scared. It's showing up to the interview even when your knees are shaking. It's speaking up in a meeting even when your voice cracks. It's walking into the gym even when you feel like everybody's staring at you. You don't wait until you feel brave to act. You act first and the bravery follows. Perfectionists have it backwards. They think if they can just eliminate every flaw, if they can look flawless, sound flawless, and perform flawlessly, then confidence will magically appear. But that day never comes because perfection is impossible. The pursuit of perfection will paralyze you. The practice of courage will free you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot build confidence in theory. You can read books, watch videos, and rehearse scenarios in your head all day long, but confidence only grows in the arena of action. And that arena is messy. You're going to stumble. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to look foolish sometimes, and that's exactly the point. Every stumble survived, every mistake corrected, every time you get back up after falling. That's where courage shows up, and that's what makes confidence stick. If you only ever take action when you're guaranteed to win, you'll never actually develop confidence because you'll never build the proof that you can survive setbacks. Let's get real about fear. Everybody feels it. The people you think are confident, they feel it too. They just don't let fear make the decision for them. They don't wait until fear disappears before they take action. They've learned that courage is doing the thing with fear, riding shotgun, not waiting until the car is empty. Think about it. The first time you rode a bike, you weren't fearless. You were wobbly, nervous, maybe even terrified. But you climbed on anyway, and with practice, you got better. The confidence came after the courage, not before. That's how every area of life works. Perfectionism, on the other hand, is the enemy of confidence. When you chase perfection, you're setting yourself up to fail before you even start, because nothing you do will ever feel good enough. Perfectionists delay action. They rewrite the email 10 times before hitting send. They obsess over details until they talk themselves out of even trying. They compare themselves to someone who's been at it for 10 years and decide it's pointless to begin. Perfectionism convinces you that unless you can do it flawlessly, it's not worth doing at all. But confidence doesn't come from flawless execution. It comes from repetition, from courage, from the willingness to take imperfect steps forward. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is redefining success. Instead of asking yourself, was I perfect? Start asking, was I courageous? Did you raise your hand in class even though you weren't sure of the answer? That's courage. Did you have the hard conversation you've been avoiding? That's courage. Did you put yourself out there knowing rejection was possible? That's courage. And every act of courage adds another brick to the foundation of your confidence. Here's something else to consider. People don't respect you for being perfect. They respect you for being real, for being human, for being willing to try. Perfection might impress people on the surface, but courage inspires them. Think about the times you've been most moved by someone else. Was it because they were flawless, or was it because they were honest, vulnerable, and brave enough to show up fully? The same is true for you. The people around you aren't waiting for your perfection. They're waiting for your courage. Now, courage doesn't mean recklessness. It doesn't mean you ignore preparation or stop caring about growth. It means you don't let the fear of messing up stop you from moving forward. It means you accept that mistakes are part of the process. Every mistake is a lesson, and every lesson makes you stronger. That's the mindset shift that builds real confidence. When you stop seeing mistakes as proof you're not good enough and start seeing them as proof you're learning, your entire outlook changes. The most confident people in the world aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who failed more times than most people have even tried. They've practiced courage so many times that fear doesn't control them anymore. Sure, it still whispers in their ear, but they've proven to themselves that they can move forward anyway. That's what makes their confidence unshakable. So if you want to build long-term confidence, stop obsessing over doing it perfectly. Stop waiting for the day when fear disappears. That day isn't coming. Instead, start practicing courage. Step into the moment scared, shaky, imperfect, but willing. Because the truth is, confidence doesn't mean you always win. Confidence means you always show up. And the more often you practice courage, the more unshakable that confidence becomes. When it comes to confidence, nothing is more powerful or more destructive than the story you tell yourself. Every single person has an inner voice running in the background, narrating their life, interpreting events, and shaping how they see themselves. The problem is that most people never stop to question that voice. They let it run wild, repeating old lies, old failures, and old fears. They let it convince them that they're not good enough, not ready, not capable. And then they wonder why they can't build confidence. Here's the truth. If the narrative in your head is toxic, it doesn't matter how much potential you have, you'll always find a way to sabotage yourself. Confidence isn't about ignoring reality or lying to yourself. It's about choosing the interpretation of reality that strengthens you instead of weakens you. Two people can experience the exact same setback. One says, see, this proves I'm not cut out for it. The other says, this is tough, but it's training me to get better. Same event, totally different story. And that story determines everything, whether you keep going or give up, whether you shrink back or step forward, whether your confidence grows or crumbles. The narrative you choose is the filter that colors your entire life. Most of us inherited our first stories from childhood. Maybe someone told you that you weren't smart, or you were too shy, or you'd never amount to much. Maybe you made a mistake once and internalized the belief that you always mess up. Those stories got repeated so often in your head that they started to feel like facts. But here's the reality check. They're not facts. They're opinions, interpretations, and often flat-out lies. And unless you take control of them, they'll keep running your life like an invisible script you don't even realize you're following. If you want to build long-term confidence, you have to become the author of your own narrative. That means paying attention to the words you use when you talk to yourself. Do you say, I always screw things up? That's not a fact, that's a story. Do you say, nobody likes me? Again, that's not a fact, it's a story. The first step to controlling your narrative is to catch those statements in the act. Once you see them for what they are, you can choose to rewrite them. Instead of, I always screw up, you can say, I make mistakes sometimes, but I learn and improve. Instead of, nobody likes me, you can say, not everyone connects with me, but I have value and people worth investing in. The story doesn't have to be some over the top positive affirmation you don't even believe. It just has to be true enough to move you forward instead of holding you back. Here's something most people don't realize: the brain believes repetition. If you repeat a story to yourself often enough, it becomes your default setting. That's why negative self-talk is so destructive. You don't just say it once, you repeat it daily, and over time your brain wires itself to expect it. The good news is the same process works in your favor if you choose to repeat empowering stories. Confidence is built when you consistently remind yourself of the times you showed up, the challenges you overcame, the proof that you are capable. When you repeat that narrative often enough, it becomes your default too. Think about athletes. The best ones don't just train their bodies, they train their minds. They visualize themselves winning, succeeding, pushing through the pain. They run those mental tapes over and over until stepping onto the field feels natural. That's controlling the narrative. You can do the same thing in your own life. Before you walk into the meeting, instead of telling yourself, don't screw this up, tell yourself, I'm prepared, I've handled challenges before and I can handle this. Before you go on the date, instead of saying, they probably won't like me, tell yourself, I'm going to show up as my authentic self, and that's enough. Now, let's be clear, controlling your narrative isn't about pretending everything is easy. It's about telling the truth in a way that empowers you instead of cripples you. If you fail at something, you don't have to say, that didn't matter. When it did, you just choose to frame it differently. Yes, I failed, but failure is feedback, and I'll use it to get better. That story fuels confidence instead of killing it. What you cannot do is keep letting that old defeated voice run unchecked. Because every time you replay the narrative of being weak, incapable, or doomed to fail, you reinforce it. And the more you reinforce it, the harder it is to act with confidence. The key is to flip the script. When the old story shows up, don't just accept it, challenge it. Ask yourself, is this actually true? Or is it just a story I've been telling myself? More often than not, you'll realize it's the latter. Over time, as you take control of your inner narrative, something powerful happens. You stop waiting for external validation to feel confident because your own voice becomes the loudest and most supportive one in the room. You start backing yourself up instead of tearing yourself down. And once that shift happens, your confidence becomes a lot harder to shake because it's rooted in an inner story you've chosen, not one the world handed you. At the end of the day, confidence isn't just about what you do. It's about what you believe about yourself while you're doing it. If the story you're telling yourself is that you're not enough, you'll find evidence to prove it, and you'll shrink if the story you're telling yourself is that you're capable, resilient, and worthy. You'll find evidence for that too, and you'll rise. The facts of your life matter, but the story you attach to them matters even more. If you want to build long-term confidence, take the pen back and write a story that lifts you up instead of drags you down. That's how you control the narrative, and that's how you take control of your confidence.